All right, everybody, how are you doing? How are you doing? This is the S. Anthony Thomas. This is the S. Anthony Says podcast, episode number 497. And this episode I'm going to title, LeBron James versus Stephen A. Smith versus Will Smith versus Chris Rock. And I'm going to tell you how it's all tied together when I'll explain, because a lot of people have been asking me, how come you never talked about it? Some things are just too over the top, meaning everybody's talking about it. For me, even wanting to waste my time talking about it, but people keep annoying me with emails, so I'm going to talk about it, and I'm going to explain to you how it's all tied together. Now, obviously, the big story, one of the big stories of the past few days was LeBron James walking up to Stephen A. Smith, standing in front of him, looking down at him, yelling at him because Stephen A. Smith said something about his son and he didn't like it and he cursed him out. And then Stephen A. Smith talked on 85 shows about it, and in every other podcast, and all the other content creators talked about it. And I purposely didn't, because I wanted to think about it for a little bit before I said anything. And here's, per your request, what I think. Both of them made mistakes. Okay? I'll start off with LeBron James. Bro, your son's a professional basketball player, and I understand why you want to protect your son, because he is your son. And if I was in this situation, I would want to protect my son too from all the criticism and any unfair treatment. But you have to be more strategic about it. Think about it for a minute. You are now walking up during a basketball game in Los Angeles, in the Los Angeles basketball stadium, and you're yelling at the number one sports guy on ESPN right after he's in the news for signing a $100 million contract. Did you think that was going to stop people from talking about your son? No, it actually made more people want to talk about your son, because it was done in public, in front of everybody. Now, I know you wanted to make your point. I get it. I would want to make my point too, but that ain't the place and that ain't the time, and I'll tell you why. More people are talking about him now. On the Stephen A. Smith side, his huge mistake was going, as a father. No, bro. The second you said as a father, everything that came after that, nobody wanted to hear it. LeBron probably didn't hear anything after you said as a father, because now he thinks that you are critiquing his parenting skills. Remember, that son almost died. There was a moment where they thought the person that you're talking about, the son you're talking about, their beloved son named after him, looks just like him, they thought he was going to die. So, of course, he's really, really protective of his son, as he normally would be. But when you almost lose a child, you're 10 times more protective of them for the rest of their daggone life. And you, the number one sports guy on the number one sports channel, start to criticize his son in the way he believes to be unfair. If Stephen A. Smith had just said, listen, LeBron James' son has enough pressure on him being LeBron James' son. The last thing he needs is everybody piling on him, giving him a hard time. He has enough pressure. Look, it was great to have him play that one game in Los Angeles. Fantastic. I think it was a fantastic moment. It was an iconic moment. It was a dream moment, your dream, his dream. But after that, send him down to the G League and let him play where he's going to get more playing time, where he can hone his skills, so when he comes back up to the big leagues, he's more ready. Had Stephen A. Smith said that, LeBron James probably wouldn't have reacted. But he started out with, as a father. Soon as you start that crap, you know how it is. When you're saying something and you don't think you're saying something that's going to tick off the person, but you say that one little phrase in the wrong way, and in your mind it sounds normal, but to the other person, all they hear is that. Now we're going to go back to LeBron. You see Stephen A. Smith standing there, and you stand on top of him. You're 6'9". I think Stephen A. Smith's like 6'1". LeBron James might be, 260, 270. With Stephen A. Smith, $190. You got damn near 100 pounds on him. On Stephen A. Smith, you're at about 7-8 inches of height on Stephen A. Smith. You're a world-class athlete. He's damn near 60, or he is 60. Walking up to a 60-year-old guy and yelling at him when you're 6'9" and a world-class athlete, that just doesn't look good. Even if you're right, it doesn't look good. All people are going to see is this big giant guy standing over a guy who's 20 years older than them, 8 inches shorter than them, and 75 pounds lighter than them. And it ain't going to look good even if you're right. I talk about things. I have a thing I call the might as well syndrome. And sometimes once you get to a certain point, only bad things can happen. And after the first bad thing happens, nothing but bad things can happen after that. That's just the way it is. If you walk up to Stephen A. Smith someone that much smaller than you and older than you. What if Stephen A. Smith snaps back at you? You're already enraged. What if you just lose it and pop him in his mouth? And now you just punched a guy a lot smaller than you, a lot older than you, in front of everybody. When you're that mad at somebody and you want to confront somebody and you're mad enough to behave in out of character, because nobody thinks of LeBron James as the kind of guy that's going to walk up and scream on anybody like that. We've seen him walk away from those things. We've seen him for 20 years stay away from those confrontations, and this time he goes the other way. What if he does slap Stephen A. Smith and Stephen A. Smith falls down, cracks his head on the ground? Or he punches Stephen A. Smith, hits him in the face and breaks his jaw, swells his face up. Do you think that's going to lead to less scrutiny of you and your son? When the number one sports guy who just signed a $100 million contract gets smacked in the face or punched in the face and gets injured by a world-class athlete in front of everybody? No, you just brought more scrutiny on yourself. You brought more scrutiny on your son, and probably about $100 million in Stephen A. Smith's bank account if he decides not to settle. At a certain point in time, it's not about whether you're right or whether you're wrong. It's about what is the result that I want. Your result that he wanted was to have Stephen A. Smith stop criticizing his son unfairly if that's what he believes happened. You both know some of the same people. LeBron could have sent that message through an intermediary to Stephen A. Smith. Yo, man, tell this dude that I said to just chill out, man. I don't want to talk to him. I'm mad at him. Just tell him to leave my son alone. He could have got the message to him that way. He could have got him on the phone. See, what happens is when you do something like that, in the comment section underneath, you're going to have a lot of people who are trolls and a lot of people who don't know how to be stoic in certain situations. Yeah, man, if that was my son, man, I would have popped him. You, a billionaire, would have popped $100 million guy, and you're a billionaire. You're going to punch that guy in front of everybody at a basketball game. Sure, you would. If you do, you're a dope. Because what happens? He gets hurt, he sues, you get suspended for the rest of the season or for the next season. You lose your sponsorships. And even people who are considering working with you are sitting there going, I was going to work with that guy, but nah. And all of a sudden you wind up losing money you don't even know that you were going to get. And your reputation is destroyed. I call it the might as well syndrome because he was right in front of Stephen A. Smith. You should have stayed away from him. Because sometimes when you get that close, here's an example of what I'm talking about. I remember I was talking to some people that I knew that lived in a more affluent neighborhood than I lived in. And they kept putting expensive stuff and just leaving it in the backyard. Now, as someone, me, who grew up in the hood, I know you don't leave stuff out like that. You're just asking for problems. In their neighborhood, they were like, it's not going to be a problem. I said, the only people, you don't, because it's never happened to you. That's why you feel that way. But I call it the might as well syndrome. Person walking by who's not the most scrupulous person sees an $800 or $1,000 lawnmower, and he's thinking, it doesn't seem like there's anybody home. At least I don't think so. And it's right there. I might as well climb over the fence to get it. Right now, he climbs over the fence. Now he's over the fence, and he's about to take the $1,000 lawnmower and push it over the fence and go about his business and sell it. But since he's in the backyard, the back door of the house is right there, and he's already over the fence. Might as well see what's in the basement. Right? I'm already over the fence, right? He opens up the door. He's in the basement. He doesn't see anybody around. Hey, there's some valuables. Since I'm already here, I might as well take that. Had he not breached the fence to get the lawnmower that shouldn't have been there in the first place, he wouldn't even have thought going through that door. But he was right there. Might as well. And so on and so forth. Let's see what's in the living room. And then all of a sudden there's people, and he confronts the people in the house. Maybe he has a gun and he robs them and home invades them. Maybe they have a gun and shoot him. And none of that would have happened had he not breached the fence because of the lawnmower. Well, in this particular case, we don't know what could have happened. Maybe Stephen A. Smith could have said something to him to tick him off so much that he just loses control and cracks Stephen A. Smith in the mouth. But it doesn't happen if you don't walk up to him angry. Doesn't matter whether you're right or not. It's about the result. You never know what can happen when you put yourself in a bad situation. Right? Just imagine Imagine you as a regular person, not as a billionaire, not as a superstar athlete. You're walking down the street with your beautiful spouse. I'm going to use guy as an example. You're walking down the street with your beautiful girlfriend, your beautiful wife. You're about 10 feet away from your car, and some guy on a construction site, or some guy across the street sees your beautiful lady in her sundress, and he sees the body parts of hers, and he comments on them. Hey, nice, insert body parts right there, right? And he's across the street, and you're 5 feet from your car. 3 feet from your car, and you're mad because he said that. Now, he's across the street. All you got to do is get in your car, right? Most women will go, they don't worry about him. He ain't nobody. And you get in the car and you just go about your business. You go home with your woman. By the time you get home on a half-an-hour trip, you forgot that guy said anything. And instead of going through the problem and going over to fight the guy, you're at your house and you're licking whipped cream off of the delicious buttocks of your wife. But we'll go back to the car. And in this case, instead of driving away, you walk over there to confront the guy. Now, in your mind, all you're going to do is, man, watch your mouth, man, watch your mouth. But you're now across the street. And all he wanted to do was make you mad. But he doesn't have a woman as delicious as your woman is, and he's upset. And he was happy just making you mad. But now you're standing in front of him. And he wanted to ruin your day anyway. So you might as well get in your face. And then you start to get mad at him. And then you start tussling. Well, now that you guys are roughing it up, he might as well bust you in your mouth. And then you wind up fighting. And maybe you go to jail for beating his behind, or he goes to jail for beating your behind. But in either case, you're messed up because you could be at your house licking whipped cream off your woman's behind. That's why you stay away from Stephen A. Smith at that time. You don't know what can happen when you confront people. You don't know. Now, did I really think that they were going to fight each other when I saw the video? Even if I was there, I wouldn't think they were going to actually fight because, let's be honest, if Stephen A. Smith and LeBron James fought 1,000 times, LeBron James would win 1,200 times. I know you're saying that math is wrong. No, I'm saying it because that's how bad he'd whoop his behind if they fought. 200 extra whoopings worth of whooping would have happened. Stephen A. Smith was confronted because LeBron James was mad. And I don't think he was as mad at Stephen A. Smith alone. No, he was mad at the entire internet. He was mad at the 20 years of bullcrap he had to go through, plus the several years of bullcrap he's going to have to go through with his son being in the league. He was mad at all of those people, and Stephen A. Smith wasn't nothing but the last Jenga block. That's all it was. LeBron James was out of character for himself. Was he right to protect his son? Of course he was. Was Stephen A. Smith right to point out that his son isn't as good as LeBron James said he was? Of course he was. LeBron James made a mistake even going up to Stephen A. Smith and putting himself in that might as well danger zone. And Stephen A. Smith was wrong for going, as a father, because man, that phrase alone, the second you say that phrase, nobody heard anything you said after that. All they heard was, you're disrespecting him as a father. The last Jenga block. Because that was LeBron James's Will Smith moment. And you know what I'm talking about. Everybody thinks of Will Smith as this great guy, happy-go-lucky guy, nice guy, inspirational quotes. But what did he do with the Oscars? He walked up and slapped one of the greatest comedians of all time in the face. Bow! On the Oscars. Just like LeBron James had to go through 2 decades of bullcrap that he had to go through, and he had reached his breaking point because Stephen A. Smith said something, and that was the last Jenga block. Chris Rock was the last Jenga block for Will Smith. It's the same thing. He wasn't that mad at Chris Rock. That joke that Chris Rock did about Jada Pinkett Smith with the hair, he might not even have known about her alopecia. But even if he did, that's the kind of joke where you make a face and go, "Come on, man," and go about the rest of your evening. Or if you're wise, you just kind of slightly react to it and go, no. Or you laugh it off because you know if you laugh it off, it goes away into the ether and nobody cares. Think about it. As smart as Will Smith is, as rich as Will Smith is, as much media training as Will Smith has had, as successful as he has, you don't think that he was broken and had gone past his breaking point to get on stage and walk up on the Oscars and assault somebody in front of 1 billion people? Then after that, sit down and, as someone who's had a television program, who knows the rules, curse on live television multiple times. It wasn't about Chris Rock, man. Chris Rock was the last Jenga block. That was 20 years of people talking crap. 20 years of people saying talking about his sexuality. 20 years of people talking about his wife. 20 years of people talking about his kid, dissing him on every program. That's the same thing with LeBron James. Decades of people dissing him on podcasts and all that kind of crap. And it just bang. Last Jenga block had to go up and do something about it. Because I know people that know Chris Rock. I don't know Chris Rock, but I know people that know him. And they said he's a pretty nice guy. Do you realize if Will Smith had been cool, talked to his wife, hey baby, I'll take care of it, and said something on social media in a diplomatic way, he would have probably gotten an apology out of Chris Rock, and maybe even a $10,000 donation to some kind of alopecia association or something like that. Had he met him at a party, say, yo, Chris, man, my wife, she has alopecia, she's real sensitive about it, so when you did the G.I. Jane joke, you kind of hurt her feelings. He had made money with those people. He knew them, and Tony Rock, Chris's brother, is a good friend and worked with Will Smith. So daggone well Chris Rock would have walked up and apologized to Jada, gave her a hug, gave her a kiss on the cheek, and he might even have said something online talking about the apology. He would have gotten what he wanted, which was the apology, instead of getting a 10-year suspension from the Oscars. The last Jenga block, my friend. Everybody has a breaking point. And both of these two people who have been icons for a long period of time, they both reached their breaking point. And unfortunately for the person who was the last Jenga block, in LeBron James's case, it was getting cursed out at a Laker game in front of everybody. And with Chris Rock, it was getting pow slapped in the face at the Oscars. Everybody has a breaking point. And you just saw two icons have a breaking point in front of everybody. We've all been there. We've all had that point in time when something was that one extra thing that just took us and moved us beyond what we would normally do. We've all done that. I talked about it on a podcast. I don't know if it was this podcast or my other podcast, where I was having an argument with a girlfriend and we were having a hard time, right? And I wasn't the best boyfriend because I was a bit of a loser, but she was being, really, she was going way over and above being mean, playing games, trying to make me jealous. You know what I'm saying? Going out and doing all this kind of stuff. She didn't actually do anything, as it turns out, but I didn't know that at the time, right? So I was getting hurt and hurt and hurt and hurt, and I sucked it up and I sucked it up, and I didn't say anything about it. And then one day she did one thing too many, and I said something that I shouldn't have said, something that I hadn't said before that day, and something I haven't said since. And I sat there and I looked at her, and I realized, wow, I just lashed out because I wanted to say something to hurt this person, because they've been hurting me again and again and again and again, crushing my soul again and again and again and again. And I lashed out because I wanted to hurt them. That's not healthy. I have never said that before. I have not said that since, because it was just mean. And I promised myself, I know the feeling that I had right before I lashed out and said that mean thing. Even though there were 55 mean things coming in my direction, I still feel bad about the one mean thing that I said, because I had reached my breaking point, and I know what that feeling is. I can recognize that feeling. It takes a lot to get me there, but I remember it. The same way I remember what it felt like to have food poisoning. There's a little tingle in my stomach, and I know if I feel that tingle in my stomach, dang, food poisoning's coming, because having food poisoning sucks. Well, I know that feeling of when I'm about to lash out and say something really mean. And it's only, like I said, it's very rare for me to be at that point. But after I did that one thing that one time and said that thing that I promised I would never say again, I've been that angry twice more. And I'm in my 50s, and I was in my 20s at the time. I've been that angry twice more. And because I recognized that feeling, I said, oh, no, you don't. No. You're not saying that mean thing or being mean to this person because they were mean to you. No. And I stopped it. Unfortunately, LeBron and Will Smith didn't know how to stop that moment from happening. But you can, because I had to learn. You've probably you may have in your life said something or done something mean because you were angrier than you've ever been before. And there's a trigger and there's a signal. What did you feel right before you did the thing or you said the thing? Remember what that feeling is. And the second you feel that feeling, Whatever you're mad at, get away from it. Whatever's making you feel that way, get away from it. Because I know a lot of people can't control that once they get to their breaking point. And if you don't believe me, turn on the news. How many times do you see people shooting up each other's cars, blowing up each other, jumping out of cars and shooting at each other, and then you find out that the reason they shot the other person is because they said something mean online to one another. And the person that gets shot, if they get caught, now a lot of times you took a life, or you hurt somebody really badly, or you almost hurt somebody, and you wind up spending decades in jail because you couldn't find out what that trigger was and notice what it is and go, oh, there's that feeling. There's that feeling when I'm about to potentially do something life-changing or stupid, and it's going to be something I regret. I may always regret it. It may be something that's so bad that I can't come back from it, and you know what that feeling is. And as soon as you feel that, you get away from the thing making you make that feeling. You got to calm down and cool down. Imagine if LeBron James saw Stephen A. Smith and was like, I'm really mad at him right now, but I'm gonna stay away from him. My team, keep Stephen A. Smith away from me because I'm really mad right now and I don't want to do something I regret. If Will Smith said, I can't believe Chris Rock said that joke, even though he didn't realize he wasn't mad at Chris Rock at the time. Yeah, but I'm not gonna run up on. I want to run up on stage and slap him, but I don't want to do that because Will Packer, the first black guy to ever produce the Oscars, who's probably a friend of Will Smith's, is producing the Oscars, and I don't want it to be the slap Oscars. I have a 95% chance of winning this Oscar. It just smells like I'm finally going to get my first Oscar. I deserved to win before, but it smells like they're finally going to give it to me, because sometimes you get the Oscar after you deserved it the first time. This might be my moment to get the Oscar. Now I have the one thing that I've always wanted is to get an Oscar. It's the one thing I haven't done in my illustrious career, and I don't want to ruin it by slapping this guy. And Questlove from my hometown of Philadelphia. I'm the Fresh Prince. He's Questlove from the legendary Roots group. He's got a chance to win an Oscar right after this. If I walk up and slap Chris Rock and do that, it's going to ruin the night for him. And in the grand scheme of things, is what he said really worth physical assault in front of 1 billion people with cameras around? If he knew what that trigger was, the thing that was going to make him do the stupid thing. If LeBron knew what that trigger was, the thing that was going to make him do the stupid thing, and he sensed it and said, nope, and shut it down. How many narratives that are out there right now wouldn't be out there? Will Smith would still be thought of as the happy guy, the great guy. Chris Rock wouldn't have got popped in the mouth. Stephen A. Smith would have been at that game, wouldn't have been a big deal. And all the extra criticism that is brought on Bronny James that he doesn't deserve from bloggers and all these other kind of people, all of that extra stuff that's going to be piled on him now because everybody wants to get a part of it, that wouldn't have happened. Sometimes you got to think before we act. So if you're in a situation where you're about to do something dumb because you're mad, because you're ticked off, stop. Listen to my voice and go, is that what you really want to do? Do you know what's going to happen if you do that? Are you sure you want to do that? Just remember that. You never know what that last Jenga block's going to be. Remember that game Jenga? You pull a little. Everybody pulls out a piece of the tower, and the last person that pulls out the piece and the tower falls down. That's Jenga. And if you go past that point, that trigger point that you know is right before you do something stupid, you never know what the Jenga block could be. You could be sitting there angry, and somebody could tap you on the shoulder, just asking you to pass the peanuts at the bar. But that's the last thing you want, and you turn around and you punch a guy in the face, and you find out he's a priest. He's an undercover cop. Or just as bad, or he was actually at the bar celebrating the fact that he's almost done taking his anger management class, which is why he's no longer allowed to go to the full contact karate championships, because he's been really, really angry, stomping people out, and you just punched him in the face at a bar before he got his certificate. We have to think before we do things. because you don't want to have someone pull out that last Jenga block and then your ass winds up in a cell block. You dig? Of course you do. All right, folks, this has been the episode, the latest episode of the S. Anthony Says podcast. I'm your host, S. Anthony Thomas. Do me a favor, folks. If you like this podcast, and you do, make sure that you recommend it to somebody. If you love this podcast, and I'm sure you do, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. If you love this podcast, and I know you do, make sure that you listen every week, because I'll be here every week, okay? I'm back, my friends. I have a YouTube channel, Mr. S. Anthony Thomas, Mr. S. Anthony Thomas. Go check that out. And basically, let's go to Linktree, S. Anthony Thomas. All my stuff's there. Or just Google me. All my crap's there. And if you like yours truly, if you like me, and I know you love me, then make sure that you follow me on everything on social media, because, well, I'm incredible. And so are you. Much love to you all. We'll see you again next time. Take care. Thanks for listening.